Hello, my name's Lauren. I'm a poet, I'm a performer, I'm a bit of everything basically. And what am I working on at the moment? I've just finished presenting for the Manchester Cultural Awards, which is really fun. And I'm working on this project today with Seth. So we're going to be doing some photo shoot, an interview, recording some poetry. And yeah, I'm up to all sorts, really.
You performed last night at One Mic Stand at the Blues Kitchen in Manchester. How was that?
I did indeed. That was good fun. I was just saying to you earlier, actually, my favourite part of the evening was dancing at the end, because normally they kick us out, but we went quite a while, didn't we? We were in there quite a while. We kept going like one more song, and then there was just like 10 more songs. It was great.
You describe your poetry as often focusing on queerness, mental health and feminism.
Mm-hmm.
Do you deliberately write about important topics, or does it come out of your subconscious naturally?
That's a good question. I think when I was younger, it was just what came out of my subconscious naturally. I think occasionally I do go into something thinking, oh, I want to write about this issue, but it's never like, I want to write about this issue, get my pen and write. It's just like, at some point I think about it, and then at some point when I'm doing a free write, it just comes out that way, if that makes sense.
When you're actually performing your poems, do you edit them on the night, on stage, or do you see them as fixed, complete things which you can memorise?
A poem's never complete. That's what we're always taught as poets. And I think performing can be a really good way of realising where poems need edits, because naturally as you're memorising a poem, you tend to miss out words or like replace words, and it's like, okay, well that's probably what sounds more natural coming out my mouth. And then on the night, you intend for it to be a certain way, but if it isn't, like no one's going to know except for you. No one knows the poem that well, and if they do, they'll just think you made it edit on purpose. So I think that's something that people get stuck up on. Like they'll be on stage and they'll say a line wrong and they'll be like, oh no, and then they'll start again or get panicked. But it's like, you just have to kind of take a deep breath and continue, because nobody knows that you got the line wrong except for you.
You told me that you class some of your poems as ethereal. What exactly does that mean to you? What is that class?
I love the word ethereal. It's kind of just like otherworldly, and it's associated a lot with like mythology and folklore, and just it helps me kind of create this persona where it is me, but it's like an exaggerated version of me who kind of exists outside, let's say, the everyday life, and kind of brings a bit of casual magic to it.
I know you're very interested in fairy tales, folklore, fantasy. Why do you think those are relevant today at all?
I think they're always relevant. Yeah, you can look at a fairy tale and think that was written a very long time ago, but the kind of morals and viewpoints behind it kind of are in tune to things that are always important to us in life, love, friendship, hope, death, just like big themes. And I think we can kind of rewrite and reinterpret fairy tales to make them relevant today. And I think as well, another thing about fairy tales that's really cool, it kind of engages like the playfulness within us. You can talk about really big important topics, but you can do it in a way that's fun and imaginative and kind of connects us to our inner child again.
You mentioned hope there, and you actually ran a set of workshops with Blue Sky on the theme of hope. Is hope important to you? Are you a hopeful person?
That's a very good question, because everyone always says I'm an optimist, whereas I think I can be quite pessimistic, like internally, but externally I'm quite optimistic. I'm trying to get them two to match, so become internally optimistic. And that project really helped with that. We were talking about it during it, like how do you actually cultivate hope? Like how is that something that you can increase? And one of the participants said that you literally, just by talking about hope, makes you more hopeful, by sharing stories about it and stuff. And honestly, it's like, I don't know where we'd be without hope. It's a necessary, If you've had a bad day, even if you've had a good day, like hoping that good day then continues. Like looking forward to the future, but also knowing that things aren't always going to be perfect, but you have hope that they'll somehow get better. I think that's like one of the most important things in being human, to be honest.
What do you enjoy or find interesting about facilitating workshops?
They're like my favourite thing, to be honest. I think just like kind of creating that little community. That could be a mixture of people who've come a lot and someone who's there, it's their first day. But just kind of creating that space, and it feels enclosed away from everywhere else, where you know, you bring in the outside world, but it's also its own like separate world, and always being like just there to help people and support them, because that's all a facilitator does really. Like, you're not there to tell them what to do. You know, whenever I run a writing task, it's only ever a suggestion. It's only ever a prompt. And I just think it's really special that you can take that time away from life and be guided by someone into thinking a certain way or like exploring a certain thought. And to be honest, I learn more from the workshops than I put out there. I'm just there to prompt you. I'm just there to give you a little nudge, and then whatever you come up with is like amazing. And I always feel so inspired. Like, I remember when I first started running workshops, and I was like, oh my gosh, someone wrote this poem based off a prompt that I gave them, or a task that I gave them, or some feedback. And it's just the coolest thing. You're like, oh my gosh, this thing exists because I helped someone do that. So I just love it.
You mentioned learning from the workshops that you run. Do you think you learn a lot from your own facilitated workshops?
Yes. So I learn through teaching. Basically, sometimes, like a lot of the time when I come to a workshop, I have not done that writing task I am prescribing to people. Sometimes I've done something similar, but a lot of the time it's like I just learn from, like teaching and giving things out to people and seeing what they come out with from it. It's how I've always learned. Like, you know, when I was doing GCSEs or whatever, I always would like teach my mum like how to do the thing, and that would help me learn it myself. So yeah, that's always kind of been a part of me.
You've also run workshops on collaging and scrapbooking. Are those techniques you use a lot?
They are hobbies that I love doing. I've always been like very crafty, and I just really love collage because it's like you're like limited, but also like there's so much freedom because you only got a certain amount of, you know, materials, magazine or whatever, and it's like you never truly know where you're gonna go with it. Like, even if you had a plan in your head, it never 100% turns out how you want it to be. And I think because I'm like such a control freak, it's like that safe space where I can just like let go and just be carried by wherever it wants to take me. I mean, that's a bit of like a deep view on it, but like it is also just fun. It's fun to cut out things and it's relaxing and to come up with goofy images and stuff. And then with scrapbooking, I also love that, but it's very different for me. So collaging is like, as I said, it's like freedom of expression. With scrapbooking, I do it as like a way of capturing memories. So for all my holidays or just like days out, I do a collage from it. And I've got this book. It was a moleskin I got like 4 years ago, I think. And it's like this thick now. It started off like that thick because it's just so full of stuff. I don't understand how it's not like broken at the seams. But yeah, that's just such a beautiful thing to go back through. I keep all the receipts, like stickers, anything I get from holiday I keep, and then I scrapbook it in there. And I just love looking through it, and I just love doing it. It's like one of the most relaxing things and the most kind of, you know, people talk about flow states. That's when I get into the most flow state, when I'm scrapbooking. I'll spend like literally like 5 hours straight, not eat or drink or like go to the toilet. I'll just be like cutting, and I'll have like a bad back by the end of it because I've been on the floor. So I love doing that so much. It's a big hobby of mine.
It's been published in anthologies by Young Identity, in Sync magazine, and in Spread the Word with Write Through This. Do you write poems specifically for either performance or publication?
Oh, I think it's important, and this is a goal, so I don't know if I always achieve it, but to have poetry be translatable both on page and on stage. So obviously there's certain things that will come across on the page that won't on stage, but I think that if you want to have a poem that you can use for like multiple things, it's important that, you know, it's both publishable, but also there's certain things you can do it within performance. And also again with the performance thing, it's like if a poem, if you don't think it would be good enough to be on page without the performance, then maybe it needs editing, you know what I mean? Because maybe it's not strong enough in the words itself, you know, you need the words and the performance together.
You mentioned free writing earlier. Can you talk about your writing process and your editing process a bit as well?
Yeah, I don't really have one. I mean, I try to free write as much as possible, but like honest free writes, not like sometimes people come into my workshops and they write a free write, it's a whole last poem, and I'm like, you did not do a free write, right? That's a good poem, but so a free write is literally just like stream of consciousness. I like to call it word vomit, which everyone gets grossed out by. But it is literally just like, imagine like a dream, you know, when you're like in one room and you're suddenly another, and then you've not got your top on and Elvis Presley's in the room, and you know what I mean, like that. That's how a good free write should be. It should just be like chaos, because it helps you kind of clear your mind and process thoughts. So I love a good free write. But honestly, a lot of the time when I gotta get a quote unquote good poem or one that I'm proud of, it kind of just like something takes over me and I feel the urge to write. And obviously you can't always just rely on inspiration. Sometimes it doesn't come. But I think it's important to know that it's okay not to write sometimes. Like, I had a big period where it wasn't that I didn't write at all. Like, I was still writing free writes and like diary entries and stuff, but I wasn't writing anything good. And it made me panic for a bit. I was like, oh no, what if I never write a good poem ever again? And I kind of just like gave into that. I was like, it's okay. Like, I'll write again at some point, and I did. I mean, it's that whole thing about writer's block. Some people say, you know, there's no such thing as writer's block. You just keep writing and you'll get there. And I think, yes, you should keep writing to an extent, but also like give your mind a break, you know what I mean? It's okay. Even if that writer's block's like a whole last year, like it's okay. It's okay not to write. And that sounds like terrible advice coming from a writer, but it's okay not to write.
How about editing?
Editing? There are certain techniques that I use if I'm struggling. So like, there's like actioning, which is like a drama technique, but basically where you put an emotion next to each line and you can kind of see what the emotional journey of the poem is. So if every line it just says despair, then maybe you're not really taking your audience on a journey. You want to take your audience on a journey throughout the poem. And that also helps in performance as well, because you can find like the underlying emotion behind each line. It's just kind of like a basic first step to kind of see where you want to go emotionally with the poem. As I said earlier, just reading it aloud can be really helpful because you can naturally edit. Getting other people to read your poem, that's always interesting, especially with editing how you perform, because they will just read it how it's written, whereas they won't have your bias of how you think there should be a rhythm, or you know what I mean, like it's just there, just reading it authentically. So I find that very helpful. And another thing is just leaving it alone, forgetting about it, coming back to it another time. You'll just naturally edit. So yeah, that's what I find helpful.
Are you influenced by theatre much?
I grew up doing theatre, so went to drama clubs growing up. That was always like my first thing that I ever did. And I did English and drama at uni. I'm not an actress. But am I interested in theatre? Yes, because in my performances, like my plans for future, I want to do more performative performances. I know it sounds a bit silly. Performative performances, like as in like, you know, involving costume, persona, like just being a bit extra basically. Not just standing there and reading a poem, just adding some kind of drama elements into it, yeah.
Your poetry often involves the natural world. Mm-hmm. Do you find peace in nature, or is it something else?
Yeah, I should go in nature more often because I do find peace in it, yes, definitely. There's a meadows, well it's not a meadows, there's a mountain golf course near where I live, and my goal is to go for a walk there every morning, which I definitely don't do, but that's my goal. And I think it's just like, when the world is so busy and hectic, just being able to just connect with nature, and that's not even necessarily like going out and immersing yourself fully, just like being on the bus and seeing a magpie from your window, which I always have to salute for good luck, or like in the city, just seeing like plants come through concrete and stuff like that, and the sunshine at the moment, like, you know, we're in these depressing winter months, but at least there's sunshine coming through. I find that nature is the easiest way for me to be mindful in everyday life. And then I like to bring that into my poetry, but then I also like to look at the transgression of nature. So kind of the darkness of it and how, yes, it's this beautiful thing, but how it can have a dark side to it, basically. I find it interesting.
Other examples of how where you live and your environment has influenced your work?
Where I live in my environment.
You mentioned the meadows specifically.
Yeah.
Is there anything like that?
The canal path, where growing up I lived near a canal path and you can walk all the way to Manchester from it, which I did do the other day. Well, I got to Salford and it went dark, but nearly there. I was like one stop away in walking distance. And I just love that area because it is that kind of melding of nature and city. So you've got obviously like, you know, the ducks and the lake and the plants, but then you've also got like the graffiti, which I fucking love graffiti. I think it's the coolest thing ever. And then you've got like, yeah, like the plants growing through the graffiti, like just, I love the juxtaposition of it. I just find it beautiful. It just feels so human because we are full of juxtapositions, so it makes sense for our landscapes to be as well.
Is there a single poem or multiple poems that have changed your day-to-day life and the way you act normally outside of art?
Poems
That you've read?
that I've read. Yeah, it'd be egotistical if I said my own.
Your own, if you can think of one of them as well.
I can't think of one of my own, is that bad? So I'll say my own first, so I'll get that bit over and done with. So I have a poem, I think it's just called Loneliness, I don't even know what it's called. But there's a line in it, it's like, there is no cure for loneliness, which sounds really depressing, and it's a refrain throughout the poem. But I actually find comfort in that. So I get lonely a lot, so does everyone, you know, even if you're around people. And just accepting that, stopping to constantly striving for company or to fill that void, just accepting that loneliness is a part of life and that it's natural and it's okay for it to feel shit. I find that really helpful, so that's like a little mantra for myself in my own poem, there is no cure for loneliness. And other people, I know this is such like a stereotypical one, but Wild Geese, Mary Oliver, you know, you do not have to be good, just like that as a refrain for everyday life is so helpful. And I don't know if there's any others that I'm like, I quote, but anything by Mary Oliver, Joy Hajo, I just find them kind of very comforting and very like life affirming. And actually the poet last night, Seth, can you remember her name? I feel really bad, the headliner.
The headline? Yeah.
The headline, we'll say the headliner for now. She's amazing, so I need to learn her name, but she, as part of her set at One Mic Stand, the poems were amazing and beautiful, but also just her talking in general felt like part of the poem, and it was just very affirming, and she was just talking a lot about remember that you're alive. And I know it sounds dumb, but you know, sometimes you forget, sometimes you're just so busy living that you forget that you are right here, alive, and that itself is a gift. So I found her very inspirational, and I want to look into more of her work, and therefore I think I'll find it more inspirational. And whatever we post this on, I'll tag her because I feel really bad I forgot her name.
It was Amira Leone.
Amira Leone, thank you. Yeah, shout out Amira, you're amazing. Yeah, you made me cry.
In terms of your actual art then,
yes.
Who has influenced you, whether they're poets or not, other artists generally?
So the poets I just mentioned, like Mary Oliver, Joy Hajo, Ocean Vuong, they're all big ones. I mean, fairy tales in general, it's not a single author, but fairy tales have really influenced me. And music, I'd say, is a big influence. I think a lot of my kind of visuals, both like literally how I present with my poetry, but also the imagery within the language, are inspired a lot by Florence and the Machine. The way I've been to one of her concerts, and just the community that she creates in that space is just beautiful. And it's that beautiful balance of like persona, but also authenticity that she has. It's like a stage presence that I really admire. And I'm just thinking about this now, you know, talk about personas and how I use them in my work. Probably growing up Marina and the Diamonds, she'd literally have like a persona per album, and I just thought that was like so cool. So yeah, that's a big influence. And I bet there's like hundreds and thousands of others. I just get inspired by everyday life and people, and the poets in my workshop especially. Yeah.
Do you deliberately try to write like those people, or is it more the messaging behind those influences, or just the visuals like you mentioned?
It's rare that I try, like, yes, I'm going to write like this person, because obviously everyone's voice is unique. And obviously as you read people's work, you unintentionally take on their things, and it's good that you do that because you get inspired. I remember there was a Joy Hajo poem that I wrote a poem directly like after. I'm trying to recall the name of the poem. Can't remember, sorry, but it's very good. I just recommend reading Joy Hajo's poetry because she has that balance between the city and nature. She's a Native American poet, but she grew up like living a lot in the city. Can't remember which city. So she kind of talks about that kind of balance and how there's nature within the city and city within the nature as well. So yeah.
I mean, talking of nature in the city, you ran a workshop called Nature in the City.
I did indeed.
Talk about that with Young Identity.
Yes, and with yourself, Seth, as well. You'll notice a pattern here. Me and Seth collaborate a lot, which I love doing, obviously. So we did it on the Deansgate Viaduct with National Trust. We did a workshop all about nature in the city, because the viaduct's a beautiful place for that, because it literally is nature in the city. If anyone doesn't know, it's like the abandoned train line, which for years was always just empty and overgrown, which, I mean, it had a beauty in itself, to be honest. But now it's like a beautiful gardens, communities, gardens, like all have set up there. So yeah, we did our workshop in that space, and I was very inspired actually by everyone in that space of just talking about how nature is within the city, because we were talking a lot about access to nature and how not everyone who lives within this area might necessarily be able to go out into nature, but so it's really important. It is spaces like that where you can, it's just on your doorstep, it's open to everyone. Yeah, and I really love doing that, but yeah, sorry.
Do you have any advice for emerging artists, in particular anything you wish you'd been told but never were?
It's hard because I didn't go into poetry thinking that I'd be doing this one day, you know what I mean? It was just like, oh, I like doing this, and then over time I built up from that. So it's hard to say kind of what advice I'd have, because I don't think I did things on purpose, if that makes sense. I think I was just volunteering a lot and putting myself forward for things that I was passionate about. There you go, that's a point. When you can, do things that you're passionate about, because then you don't have to fake it. You don't have to be like, oh, I really want to do this job, or I really want to be part of this opportunity, because you genuinely do really want to be it. And then people will see that shine through. They will see your passion, and that will come over experience or anything else, because they'll see how much you're willing to put into it, your like whole heart and soul. So yeah, I think if you try and latch on to things that you are truly passionate about, rather than things that might look good on the CV but aren't things that you care about, if that makes sense.
Finally, what projects have you got coming up, or anything you're particularly excited for in the future?
What projects have I got coming up? Well, we were just talking about how basically for a while now I've really wanted to film like a poetry video, like a short film, exploring this kind of persona of ethereal, as we were talking about before. I'm performing one of the poems today with Seth that's going to be in that, but I've storyboarded this whole thing, so I just need to do it basically. So there's going to be costume changes. It's something I performed on stage, but it's something I want to have like quite professional like filming of, so that then I can go out there and show people and be like, oh look, I want to perform this thing, because it's kind of outside of just standing on the stage and reading a poem, which I normally do. It's a lot more involved than that. And there's a dream project that I really want to do, so I might as well say it because I can manifest it then. Along the line of experimental performance, I think there's a lot of open mics in the city, which is great. And there's also people who are doing experimental poetry performance, but that's like kind of like a higher level, like, they're doing shows and stuff. But there's not really much for experimental poetry with the feeling of an open mic, if that makes any sense. Like, there's some things that I would want to do in poetry performance that I would feel weird going onto an open mic, in my leotard and my glitter, like, you know what I mean? So I really want to create like a space that kind of has that open mic feel, but is for more experimental stuff, like combining poetry with like performance, monologue, drag, whatever, basically, singing, anything. So that's like a dream of mine, and I'd love to kind of produce that, because I'm starting to produce my own events. That's something I've got coming up, the Golden Age Big Band. So basically, I used to work in a care home as an activities coordinator, and there I met the wonderful Joe Cox, who's our entertainer, and he approached me once I left the care home, basically saying that he wanted to do a big band event. So he'd put a band together of like 17 members, and he wanted my help in producing it, because a lot of the stuff we're doing is aimed at the elderly, which obviously I worked with. And we've got some events coming up that are just in general. So we got, I think it's the 9th of February, we've got an event in Altrincham, and then we're also doing an event for care homes especially. Obviously I'm excited about both events, but I'm really excited about the event on the 15th for care homes, because I just really want to recreate that feeling that a lot of the residents used to tell me about, of like when they'd go dancing with their friends and their husband in the big dance halls, and they'd listen to live bands. And it's just something that doesn't really exist much anymore. And one day I'd like to bring that to younger people as well, to be honest, like an intergenerational thing. But for now, just kind of creating that special space for them so they can reminisce, so that they can make new memories. And we're doing it near Valentine's Day as well, which I think is lovely, because my nan herself met her husband at a dance hall, and a lot of people will do, so I think it'd be like a lovely little thing. So that's like a big thing I've got coming up. And I've probably got other things going on, I don't know, I need to look at my to-do list. Well, yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank
everybody,
you.
for Lauren Temple.